Welcome, learner, to your personalized deep dive into the AI world. Today, we're jumping right into the AI Daily News Digest from April 18th, 2025.
Yeah, pulling out some key highlights.
Exactly. Think of it as your cheat sheet. We've got Google's new Gemini, some chat about OpenAI's latest new models like BLT and BitNet, and JetBrains updates.
Quite a bit to unpack, actually. This mid-April snapshot, it really shows both, refinement and some genuinely new ideas bubbling up.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Google's Gemini 2.5 Flash. Sounds like this one's getting some attention.
It is, and it's placed itself, interestingly, in terms of cost.
How so?
Well, it sits right between their Gemini 2.0 Flash and the 2.5 Pro model, price-wise, that is.
Okay.
And what's kind of fascinating is how its announcement seems tied to these LMArena ELO ratings.
Oh, right, the community benchmarks. Are they really having that much influence now?
It seems so. I mean, industry leaders are actually citing them. It suggests these public rankings are becoming a real factor in how labs are thinking about positioning their models.
Like a public leaderboard driving strategy.
Pretty much, yeah. Based on, anonymous user feedback on how well they chat.
So Gemini 2.5 Flash also has this thinking budget feature. What exactly is that?
Right, the thinking budget. It's designed to offer more granular control than just, say, the low, medium, high settings you see elsewhere, like with Anthropic or OpenAI.
More control over what, though? The reasoning process.
Exactly. You can potentially fine-tune how much computational effort the model puts into thinking through a problem.
Is it actually useful, though? I saw some debate mentioned.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? There's likely a trade-off. More control means potentially more cost, computationally speaking. Is the improved output worth it for everyday tasks?
Maybe not for everyone.
Probably more for power users with really specific, complex reasoning needs. For standard stuff, maybe the simpler settings are fine.
Gotcha. And there's this feeling of Google wakes up around Gemini.
Yeah, that sentiment seems to be around. It probably reflects a feeling that maybe Google, despite all their research history, seemed a bit slower rolling out top-tier LLMs recently compared to others.
Right. OpenAI and Anthropic have been making a lot of noise.
Exactly. So these newer, capable Gemini releases feel like Google is really pushing hard again, investing significantly.
And adoption is happening fast.
Apparently so. OpenRouter, for instance, already has Gemini 2.5 Flash integrated.
Already? Wow.
Yeah, and they even offer two versions, a standard one and a thinking variant.
Ah, so you can actually use that thinking budget control right away through OpenRouter.
Precisely. Allows that customization of reasoning tokens we talked about.
Okay, let's switch gears to OpenAI. The O3 and O4 mini models. Seems like there's some early chatter, maybe some concerns.
Yes, definitely discussion happening there, particularly around performance, reliability, and hallucinations.
Hallucinations, like the models are just making things up.
That's what users are reporting, yeah. For both O4 Mini and O3 sometimes. They'll apparently generate information that sounds totally plausible, but it's just wrong.
Can you give an example?
Things like inventing fake business addresses, details that seem specific but aren't real.
Yikes. That's not great if you need accurate information.
Definitely a concern. And people have suggested, just telling the model to verify using search.
But can you trust it to do that properly if it's hallucinating in the first place?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? How confident can you be in its ability to find and use correct sources if its baseline output is sometimes fabricated?
It's a bit of a paradox.
It is. Interestingly, there are reports that GPT 4.1 Nano, an older model, might actually be better at factual tasks than O3 and O4 Mini.
Really? That is surprising. You'd expect the newer ones to be better across the board. What about coding? How are they doing there?
Well, in coding environments like Cursor, the opinions seem a bit more divided. Some developers are finding O4 Mini highs specifically to be really good. Superior for analyzing code bases, even large ones, handling logic. Better than Gemini 2.5 Pro or 3.7 thinking in some cases, they say.
That sounds promising for developers, then.
It does, but there's a major catch.
Oh, what is that?
The output costs for O4 Mini are apparently very high. Some are calling it borderline unusable.
Ouch. So, great performance, but maybe too expensive for regular day-to-day coding assistance.
That seems to be the trade-off some users are encountering, limits its practicality.
Okay. And what about this issue with the context window in OpenAI's web interface? They talk about 120K tokens, right?
Right, that's the advertised capability. A huge context window, letting it handle a lot of information at once.
But
But in practice, using the web interface, pro users are hitting limits much lower than that. Reports suggest input is often restricted to around 64K tokens.
So nearly half the advertised context.
Seems like it, yeah. They're getting message too long errors. So if you're relying on that interface, you might not be able to actually use the full 120K context window effectively.
That's a pretty significant gap between the spec sheet and reality for those users.
It is. And adding another layer of complexity, there are these slightly strange observations about performance within different context window sizes.
How so?
Some users are finding that O3 and even Gemini 2.5 sometimes seem to perform better with a full 120K context, even if the query itself doesn't need that much compared to using a smaller window like 16K.
Better at 120K than 16K. That seems backwards.
It does seem counterintuitive. Maybe having all that potential context available helps its internal processing somehow, even for shorter tasks. It raises questions about how these models really utilize that long context.
Definitely something that needs more looking into.
Yeah.
And there was also a visual example mentioned with O3 counting rocks.
Yes, the visual model, referred to as O3 in this context. It apparently struggled quite a bit with a seemingly simple task, counting rocks in an image.
How badly?
Even after thinking, presumably using more processing time for almost 14 minutes, it still couldn't get the count right. Highlights that precise object counting is still a real challenge for these models.
14 minutes. Okay, yeah, still limitations there. Let's shift to some newer architectures. The Byte Latent Transformer, or BLT.
Right, BLT. It's a novel LLM architecture that's just launched, generating some buzz. Benchmarks are starting to appear.
And the key
The
thing...
weights are available publicly, which is great for the open source community.
Absolutely, lets people really dig in.
Yeah, and the developers are working with Hugging Face to get proper transformer library support, which would make it way easier for folks to use.
Good stuff. And Microsoft Research also has something new, BitNet.
Yes, BitNet B1.582B4T. Sounds like a mouthful.
It does. What's the core idea?
It's a native 1-bit LLM. 2 billion parameters trained on 4 trillion tokens.
Okay, 1 bit. That's the key part. Lower precision.
Exactly. The parameters, the model's internal numbers, are represented with very low precision. Just 1 bit.
Which means less compute needed.
Potentially, yes. Especially for inference, actually using the model to generate text or code, it could be much more efficient.
More energy efficient? Maybe run on smaller devices.
That's the hope. It could be a big step towards greener, more accessible AI. Implementations are already up on Microsoft's GitHub for people to try.
Interesting. Okay, finally, let's look at developer tools. JetBrains AI Assistant had a big update.
Seems like a pretty significant one, yeah. They're now offering free, unlimited code completions.
Free and unlimited. In which versions?
In all their paid IDEs, so not the free community editions, but still, that's a strong offering for professional developers.
What else is new?
They've integrated newer cloud models,
Yeah.
GPT 4.1, Claude 3.7, Gemini 2.0, plus enhanced features like better air.
Remind me, areas.
Retrieval augmented generation, where the AI pulls in info from external sources to give better, more context-aware answers.
Got it.
And they've added a multi-file edit mode, which could be really helpful for bigger coding tasks.
And local models. That's a big trend.
Yes, they've added local LLM integration. Allows on-device inference.
So potentially faster, more private.
That's the idea. Lower latency, data stays local. But again, this feature isn't in the free community editions.
Okay, limitations noted. Anything else on the local LM front?
Well, the current connection method is via an OpenAI-compatible API, which is fine for many setups, but it doesn't yet support connecting to private, authenticated LLMs you might have running on-premises within a company. That could be an issue for some enterprise users.
Ah, okay, so maybe not quite ready for all corporate environments yet.
Potentially. And one last little thing. Some user confusion about their credit system. The M&L credits aren't clearly defined, apparently.
Needs better documentation there. So quite a range of updates then. From core models improving or maybe stumbling a bit,
Right, like with O3 and a 4 Mini.
to brand new architectures like BLT and BitNet, pushing efficiency, and then practical tool integrations like JetBrains.
Absolutely. It really shows how fast things are moving on multiple fronts simultaneously. Pushing capabilities, but also trying to make things more efficient and usable.
So, learner, that wraps up our quick tour through some highlights from the April 18th AI Daily News Digest. We saw Gemini 2.5 Flash making noise, the ongoing story around O3.4 Mini's performance ups and downs, Cool new ideas like BLT and BitNet, and real-world updates and tools like JetBrains AI.
The pace is just relentless,
It
really.
really is. What stood out most to you from all this? What questions does it make you want to ask or explore further? This deep dive is really just scratching the surface. There's always more under the hood. Perhaps, thinking about that contrast between the potential power of 4-MIDI encoding versus its cost and hallucination issues.
Hmm.
How do you weigh those factors when evaluating a new AI tool?